Commander Vash sat in the corner of a dim bar on the neutral station, surrounded by the soft hum of alien machinery and the quiet murmur of voices speaking in dozens of languages. His scaled skin had turned a pale gray with age, and his eyes carried the weight of countless battles. Around him sat 5 younger officers, all of them eager to hear the stories that had made Vash legendary across the Krell military forces. The bartender, a tall being with 4 arms, had left them undisturbed hours ago. Vash lifted his drink and let the liquid settle on his tongue before speaking. "The first story I want to tell you," he began, "is about Kepler Station and the day I learned that humans are not what we believe them to be." Krell had received intelligence reports about a small human outpost on the edge of Krell territory. It was called Kepler Station, a simple trading post with minimal defenses and a skeleton crew. The analysis suggested that the humans stationed there would surrender immediately upon seeing Krell warships arrive. Command decided this would be an easy victory, a show of strength that would intimidate any human settlements nearby. Vash leaned back in his chair, and his mandibles clicked slowly as he prepared to tell what he had witnessed. "I was part of the assault team," he said, "a junior commander with 20 soldiers under my command. We arrived with 3 heavy cruisers and 12 fighter craft. The station had no missiles, no laser cannons that we could detect, and no sign of any serious defense systems. Our sensors showed 37 humans on that station, most of them scientists and maintenance workers. We expected to take control within minutes. The first assault team landed without any resistance. That should have warned us something was wrong. But we did not pay attention. The station appeared empty, its corridors dark and abandoned. My team moved forward, weapons ready, searching for any human who might resist. Then the entire station came alive. The lights went out, all of them, plunging the corridors into absolute darkness. The humans had disabled our night vision systems, using some kind of electromagnetic pulse that affected only our equipment, but the humans could see us perfectly because they wore thermal helmets that we did not know about. Our first team lost 8 soldiers in the darkness before they could retreat. By then, I understood that the humans had planned something. Their military leaders were Captain Marcus Webb and Lieutenant Patricia Gomez, both experienced soldiers who had spent weeks preparing the station for exactly this kind of attack. Webb had studied Krell military tactics and knew that we relied heavily on our superior technology and numbers, understood that our soldiers fought in formation and obeyed commands without question. The humans, he realized, could overcome this through chaos and deception. Webb transformed the station into a maze of traps and choke points, used the station's own structure against us, collapsing sections of corridor to prevent our soldiers from advancing. In their organized formations, he filled certain areas with toxic gases that affected Krell physiology, but left humans unharmed because they wore environmental suits. He had his people stationed in places we could not easily reach, firing from above and below. When we tried to enter the main computer core, we found that Patricia Gomez had locked down all the systems. She had distributed access codes to 6 different soldiers, so that even if we captured one, we could not access the station systems. She had created automatic defense systems that would respond to Krell biometric signatures. She had turned the entire station into a weapon against US. As Vash told this story, his eyes grew brighter with a strange kind of emotion that was not fear or anger, but something closer to respect. Over the next 3 days, we threw everything at that station. He continued, we sent more soldiers, more equipment, and more firepower. Then it seemed necessary to take a small outpost. The humans lost soldiers too. 17 of them died defending that station. But for every human we killed, we lost 2 soldiers. Our command wanted to simply destroy the station and be done with it. But we could not do that. The humans were transmitting our entire assault to nearby human military stations. They were sending detailed reports of our tactics, our weapons, our formation strategies, everything. Our superiors realized that destroying the station would only confirm to all humans that we were willing to commit mass destruction. So We had to keep taking that station intact, which meant we had to defeat the humans inside. Captain Marcus Webb never gave up when we breached the upper levels. He retreated to the lower levels when we flooded certain corridors with poison gas. He moved his remaining people to the sealed sections when we cut off his food and water supplies. He had already stockpiled enough for his people to survive another week. Patricia Gomez continued fighting from the computer core, her fingers flying across control panels, sending new instructions to automated defense systems she had recorded. Krell attack patterns and fed them into combat algorithms that predicted where our next attack would come from. The humans fought with a kind of desperation that we did not understand. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Yet they kept fighting. They had no chance of ultimate victory. Yet they refused to surrender. On the third day, human reinforcements finally arrived. 2 human destroyers and 4 escort ships came through the wormhole. 3 heavy cruisers could have destroyed them. But our main force was still engaged inside Kepler Station, and command ordered a retreat as we withdrew. I saw something that I have never forgotten. Captain Marcus Webb stood in the observation window of the station. He was exhausted, wounded, and his uniform was torn and stained with blood. But he was watching us leave, and his face showed something I could not identify. It was not fear. It was not hatred. It was something I later understood was hope. Patricia Gomez appeared beside him together. They watched our ships disappear. The cost of taking Kepler Station had been 347 Krell soldiers dead and 212 wounded. Human losses were 17 dead and 6 wounded. Those numbers did not match the mathematics of conquest that we had learned. Vash sat silent for a moment, letting his words settle over the younger officers. What I learned that day, he finally said, was that humans fight differently than we do. They do not fight because their commanders tell them to fight. They fight because they believe in protecting something. They fight because they are willing to sacrifice themselves for their comrades. They fight because they understand that sometimes survival is not as important as victory. That was the day I first realized that humans were dangerous, not because of their weapons, but because of what they are willing to do with those weapons. One of the younger officers leaned forward, eager to hear another story. Vash noticed this and decided the second tale would be equally important. The second encounter I want to tell you about happened near the Helios system. He said quietly, this was different from Kepler Station. This was a true battle between military forces, not a defensive action by a small garrison. Krell had received intelligence that a human military force was gathering near Helios. Our command estimated that the humans were preparing a major invasion of Krell territory. They believed they had found a significant threat that needed to be eliminated. Immediately, 3 heavy cruisers were assigned to the mission. Along with 20 fighter craft and several support vessels, I was promoted to major by this time, commanding a naval unit of 250 soldiers. When we arrived at Helios, we found that the human force was smaller than expected. There was no invasion fleet waiting for us. Instead, there was a single battalion of human soldiers, perhaps 800 of them, positioned in the asteroid field that surrounded the Helios system. Our commanders laughed at this one human battalion against our full assault force. Seemed like a joke. We had superior numbers, superior firepower, superior ships, and superior shields. We expected to crush the humans within hours, but the commander of that human battalion was Major Sarah Mitchell. She had a reputation in the military circles as a brilliant tactical officer. What we did not know was that she had studied every Krell military engagement for the past decade. She knew how we moved through space. She knew the typical patterns of our attack. She knew the range of our weapons and the acceleration rates of our ships. Sarah Mitchell positioned her battalion in the asteroid field in a way that would seem chaotic to our sensors, but it was not chaotic at all. Her soldiers were arranged in small cells, each cell hidden behind asteroids. each cell equipped with longer-range weapons than we expected human soldiers to have when we tried to move forward through the asteroid field. We ran into trapped small explosions designed to channel our movement in particular directions, automated mines that triggered at Krell. Biometric signatures ambush points where human soldiers waited with weapons that could penetrate our standard shielding. We had believed that the asteroid field would be our advantage. We could use our superior technology to scan through the rocks and locate the humans, but Sarah Mitchell had discovered something about the asteroids. In the Helios field, they contained high concentrations of certain minerals that interfered with our scanning equipment. She had weaponized the environment itself against us as we lost our technological advantage. The human battalion gained theirs. They knew every canyon, every passage through the asteroid field. They had mapped terrain that we could not even scan properly, and they fought with a coordination that was almost telepathic. One human soldier was named Daniel Foster. He was a sergeant in Mitchell's battalion, serving as a squad leader in one of the combat cells. Foster was not the strongest or the fastest human soldier, but he was brave. When a Krell assault team began to push through his sector, Foster made a choice. He armed every explosive device he had, every grenade, every mine, and every charge in the battalion supply. He gathered them together in a harness around his body. Then he walked directly toward the approaching Krell soldiers. My sensors picked him up when he was 50 meters away. My first reaction was confusion. This human was advancing toward us, not retreating. As he came closer, I realized what he had done. He had loaded himself with explosives. He was planning to detonate them all at once to stop the Krell advance. I ordered my soldiers to fire, but Foster moved with a speed that seemed impossible. He reached the main group of Krell soldiers, embraced them as if in greeting, and then detonated every charge at once. Explosion was massive. 15 Krell soldiers died. Instantly, another 10 were wounded severely, and Daniel Foster died. His body was vaporized in the blast. There was no heroic death, no moment of peace, just an instant of violence, and then nothing. But that explosion stopped our advance through his sector for hours. It gave Major Sarah Mitchell time to reposition her forces and prepare another ambush for us. When I learned what Foster had done, I felt something I had never felt before. It was not grief, because grief is for species who understand loss in the way humans do. It was something closer to shock. This human, this sergeant, had given his life to stop an advance that would have broken through our defenses. From a pure military standpoint, it was an excellent tactical decision. From any standpoint of personal survival, it was insanity, but that was the point. Humans were willing to do things that no Krell would ever do. Humans were willing to sacrifice themselves, not because they had no choice, but because they understood that sometimes sacrifice was necessary. The battle near Helios lasted 17 days. By the end of it, our forces had pushed the human battalion back, but we had lost so many soldiers that we could not pursue them. The humans retreated, but they were not defeated. They had inflicted 3 times as many casualties on us as we had inflicted on the Major. Sarah Mitchell sent a message to our command. It said simply that she and her battalion were leaving the Helios system, that they would be watching the next time the Krell came to this region of space. She promised they would be ready. She kept that promise for the next 2 years. Every Krell engagement in that region resulted in losses far exceeding what we expected. Humans had learned our tactics and begun to prepare even more elaborate defenses. Sarah Mitchell had turned the entire Helios region into a fortress, with billions of hidden weapons and defensive systems spread across the asteroid field. Vash paused and looked at each of the younger officers in turn. "Do you understand what I am telling you?" he asked. "It is not the initial battle that matters. It is what comes after. The humans learn from each encounter they adapt faster than any species we have ever fought. Sarah Mitchell saw her battalion was losing. And instead of surrendering, she planned for the next war. She understood that one battle was just one moment in a much longer conflict. She fought not just to win that day, but to ensure she would win the next time as well. And that, he said quietly, is why humans are truly dangerous. Not because they win every battle, but because they refuse to believe they have lost. They always think there is another way, another tactic, another chance to turn the tide. The bar had grown quieter now, and even the bartender seemed to be listening to Vash's stories, though he pretended to be cleaning glasses at the far end of the counter. Vash ordered another drink before he continued with the third story, the third incident I want to tell you about. He began, happened on a colony world called New Terra. This story is different because it does not involve soldiers or battles. It involves what we call civilians. The Krell had received intelligence reports that a military installation was being constructed on New Terra. Our command believed this installation was designed to threaten Krell territory. An orbital bombardment was ordered. Target coordinates pointed to what our sensors showed as a large, fortified structure that we assumed was military in nature. What we did not know was that we had made a terrible mistake. The structure we targeted was not a military installation. It was a hospital and medical facility. Inside that hospital, there were 312 people. Most of them were humans who had chosen to settle on New Terra and build a life away from the core human worlds. Many of them were elderly, and many were sick or injured. The children's ward was on the upper levels, filled with young humans aged from newborns to 12 years old when the bombardment began. The first strike hit the hospital's eastern wing. The explosion was massive and sudden within seconds. The structure was collapsing. Alarms sounded throughout the building. Nurses, doctors, and medical personnel rushed to evacuate patients and protect those who could not move on their own. Among these workers were two humans named Dr. Helen Reeves and Nurse Emma Torres. Helen Reeves had spent 30 years working in medicine. She had delivered thousands of babies, treated millions of injuries, and guided countless people through their final moments. She was a woman dedicated to preserving life in all its forms. Emma Torres was younger, only 28 years old, but she had the kind of compassion that made her perfect for nursing. She treated every patient as if they were her own family. When the bombardment started, both women were in the children's ward. There were 12 children there that morning, ranging in age from 3 to 11 years old. Helen looked at Emma and they did not need to speak. They both understood what needed to happen, while other medical staff helped evacuate the adults and the more mobile patients. Helen and Emma stayed with the children. They began moving them toward the emergency shelter on the lowest level of the hospital. But the bombardment continued. The second strike hit the hospital's main corridor, the very corridor that Helen and Emma would need to use to reach safety. The passage collapsed behind them as they moved through it. Emma was pulling 3 children along with her. Helen was carrying 2 more and guiding 2 others. The ceiling came down without warning. Debris fell everywhere. Emma saw the collapse coming and made a split-second decision. She pushed the children in her care forward, away from the falling rubble. Then she positioned her body between the children and the Tajitli and away from the falling rubble. Then she positioned her body between the children and the door. Collapsed. Large pieces of ceiling and wall struck her, crushing her arms and legs. She screamed once, a sound of pure pain. Then she stopped, but her body remained between the children and the danger. One of the children, a girl named Lisa, tried to crawl back to help. Emma's voice, weak and filled with agony, told her to run. The children obeyed. They ran toward Helen, who gathered them all and continued moving deeper into the hospital. Emma Torres never moved again. The pain in her body was so severe that she could not rise. She lay there beneath the rubble, slowly losing consciousness. Knowing that she had done what she needed to do, the children had lived because of her sacrifice. Helen Reeves felt the loss in her heart. But she did not stop. She continued moving. Despite her own injuries, the third bombardment strike hit the structure's southern section, further destabilizing everything. Helen had only managed to reach the shelter with 8 of the 12 children. 4 others had been separated in the chaos. Helen positioned the 8 children in the shelter, made sure they had water and oxygen masks. Then she did something that took every ounce of willpower she possessed. She went back. Out into the collapsing hospital, she went back looking for the 4 missing children. The internal alarms were still screaming. Air was thick with smoke, and debris fires had started in multiple locations. Helen moved through the chaos. Guided only by her memory of the hospital's layout, she found the first child trapped under a fallen shelving unit. She pulled the child free and guided them back to the shelter. She found the second child in a storage closet. Crying and terrified, she picked the child up and carried them back to the shelter. She found the third child hiding under a desk in one of the offices. She did not waste time asking questions. She simply picked the child up and returned to the shelter, but she could not find the 4th child. Time was running out. The hospital was collapsing in sections, and the shelter would not hold much longer. Helen had already been exposed to numerous toxic fumes, already suffered broken ribs and a fractured arm, already used more energy than her body could sustain. But she went back out again. She searched everywhere she could think of. She called the child's name, her voice hoarse and damaged from the smoke, and finally, she found the child in the medical records room, hiding under a desk, silent and traumatized. Helen wrapped the child in her arms and carried them back. She made it to the shelter with seconds to spare. The hospital's main structure collapsed completely 5 minutes later. Helen had gotten all 12 children to safety. She had lost her colleague, Emma Torres, but she had preserved 12 lives. When the rescue teams finally arrived, they found Helen in the shelter, surrounded by frightened children. She was conscious, but barely. Her injuries were severe. Several bones were broken. Her lungs were damaged from smoke inhalation. Her skin was burned in multiple places, but she was alive. And more importantly, all 12 children were alive. Vash's voice had become quieter as he told this story. What puzzles me about this incident, he said, is that Dr. Helen Reeves never cursed the Krell when our medics arrived to help her. She did not spit at them or fight them. She accepted our medical aid, and she thanked us. She thanked us for helping her save the children that confused our soldiers. How could a human thank the species that had just destroyed her hospital and killed her colleague? How could she show mercy to the enemy? I asked her this myself when I interviewed. Later, she looked at me with eyes that had witnessed tremendous pain. She said that anger would not bring Emma Torres back. She said that hatred would not heal the children's trauma. She said that the only thing that mattered now was keeping those children alive and safe. She said that we were no longer the enemy at that moment. We were simply hands that could help save lives. That answer haunted me for years after I heard it, because she was right in that moment, in that shelter, with 12 children around her. Dr. Helen Reeves understood something that takes most Krell an entire lifetime to comprehend. She understood that individual mercy matters more than collective revenge. She understood that protecting the innocent is more important than punishing the guilty. She chose to see us as potential helpers instead of enemies, and in doing so, she showed a kind of courage that no soldier could match. Vash leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes for a moment before speaking again. The 4th story, he said, is perhaps the most complicated one. It involves a human named Captain Nathan Brooks. Brooks was not primarily a soldier, though he was Trained in combat, he was a diplomat and a negotiator. He had spent years trying to build understanding between human governments and the Krell. The story begins at the Outer Council Station, a neutral meeting place where representatives from dozens of species came to negotiate and discuss matters of galactic importance. The Krell were participating in peace talks with the human delegation. The talks had been ongoing for 6 months. Both sides had made concessions and agreements. There was genuine hope that the Krell and humans might finally establish a lasting peace. Nathan Brooks was one of the lead negotiators for the human side. He was patient and thoughtful. He listened carefully to Krell concerns and tried to address them fairly. He did not demand anything unreasonable. He simply wanted both sides to agree to stop fighting. I was at the station in an administrative capacity. Vash continued. I was observing the talks for the Krell military command. I saw Brooks work for hours in the negotiation chambers. I saw him compromise on points that were important to humans. I saw him show respect for Krell culture and traditions. I believed he was genuine in his desire for peace. But our military command had other plans, unbeknownst to the negotiators. The Krell High Command had decided that peace was not in our strategic interest. They wanted to eliminate the human delegation and destroy human credibility in the Galactic Council. They ordered an assault on the station's security forces. Arrived suddenly. They were disguised as maintenance personnel until they reached the negotiation chamber. Then they revealed weapons and began attacking. Everything happened very quickly. The human delegation had no weapons in the negotiation chamber. That was the agreement between both sides to show good faith. They were completely unarmed and unprepared for violence. I watched Nathan Brooks stand up from his seat. I watched him see his colleagues being gunned down, and I watched him make a choice that I have never forgotten. There was a Krell soldier standing near Brooks, a guard who was part of the assault team. The guard was temporarily distracted, looking at other humans. Brooks moved with speed that was surprising for a human. He disarmed the Krell soldier and took the energy weapon. He did not hesitate or question what to do next. He simply moved with purpose. Brooks ran directly at the assault team leader. This took everyone by surprise. The leader was expecting humans to run or hide, not attack. Brooks was shot 3 times during his advance, but he kept moving. The energy blast burned his shoulder, his chest, and his leg. Still he moved forward. He reached the assault leader and knocked the weapon from his hand. Then he used the weapon he had taken to stop the leader from continuing the attack. Brooks then turned to the other soldiers in the room. His voice was steady despite his pain and his wounds. He told them to stand down, to drop their weapons, or he would kill them. Most of them obeyed. The assault had been stopped by one human with no military training and severe injuries. After the assault was contained and reinforcements arrived, Brooks was immediately taken to the medical bay. He had suffered 3 serious energy weapon wounds. His injuries were severe enough that he should have died, but he received treatment and he survived. More importantly, he survived with the ability to speak and think clearly. When I interviewed him later, I asked him why he had done it. Was in pain, barely able to move, and he knew he might not survive his injuries, but he spoke calmly to me. He said that he had spent 6 months building relationships with Krell representatives. He said that he believed those individuals wanted peace as much as he did. He said that the assault was being carried out by those who did not want peace. He said that his duty was to stop the assault, not because it was easy or safe, but because it was right. He said that violence was sometimes necessary to prevent greater violence. He said that he had chosen to be a soldier in that moment because circumstances demanded it, but he also said something that deeply affected me. He said that becoming violent did not have to mean becoming cruel. He said that the Krell soldiers who had attacked them were also victims of a command structure that was forcing them to commit acts they did not truly want to commit. He said that he had tried to stop the assault with minimal casualties. When he had the opportunity to kill Krell soldiers, he had only done so as a last resort. he had tried to disable and capture instead of destroying, had shown mercy even while fighting for his life. This disturbed me greatly in Krell culture. We understand mercy as weakness. We believe that an enemy who shows mercy is an enemy who should not be trusted. But Nathan Brooks was not weak. He had faced the assault team and won. He had faced death and survived. His mercy had not come from weakness, but from strength. After the incident, the peace talks continued. The Krell High Command was forced to acknowledge what had happened. They could not deny that we had attempted to assassinate the human delegation. Nathan Brooks had evidence of the entire assault. He had testimony from multiple witnesses. He had documentation of the order to attack. The negotiations resumed, and this time they were more serious. Both sides realized that there were individuals within their own governments who did not want peace. But Nathan Brooks did not use the incident as an excuse for revenge. He did not demand that the Krell leadership be punished. He simply asked that the peace talks continue and that both sides commit to removing the individuals who had ordered the assault. He asked this despite being in pain from his wounds. Asked this despite knowing that the assault had almost killed him and had killed 3 members of the human delegation. Years later, I learned that Nathan Brooks had become a military general. He had returned to active military service after the incident at Outer Council Station, but he had maintained the same philosophy. He had become known for tactical brilliance combined with mercy. His soldiers would follow him anywhere because they knew he would not waste their lives on meaningless objectives. His enemies respected him because they knew that if they surrendered, they would be treated with honor. He had proven that a warrior could be both fierce and compassionate. He had proven that strength and mercy were not opposites. Vash opened his eyes and looked at the younger officers. This story, he said, taught me something different from the others. Captain Brooks taught me that humans understand something about conflict that we do not fully grasp. They understand that wars end. They understand that enemies sometimes become allies. They understand that the person you are fighting today might be the person you are working with tomorrow. So they fight without hatred. They fight to accomplish an objective, not to destroy for the sake of destruction. And when they win, they do not punish unnecessarily. They seek understanding instead. Is why Nathan Brooks was dangerous, not because of his weapons or his physical strength, but because of his mind and his ability to see beyond the immediate conflict to something larger and more important. The night had grown very late by the time Vash began the final part of his story. Most of the other patrons had left the bar. Only the 5 younger officers remained. Completely absorbed in his narrative, Vash was old now, and they could see the weight of his years and his memories in every movement. I have told you 4 stories, he said, and now I must tell you the most important part. He must explain what these stories mean and why I am sharing them with you. I am not telling you these stories for entertainment. I am telling you because the time is coming when the Krell will face humanity again. This will not be a small skirmish or a limited engagement like we have had in the past. This will be a true test of will and capability, and I need you to understand what you are facing. For too long, our military command has underestimated humans. For too long, we have believed that our superior technology and our superior numbers guarantee victory. We have believed that humans are primitive creatures who cannot possibly stand against Krell might. We have been wrong about all of it. The first story about Kepler Station showed you that humans can turn the tables on us even when they are vastly outnumbered. They have minds that work in creative ways. They can improvise and adapt in moments. They can see opportunities where we see only obstacles. When a human commander plans a defense, they are not simply following established protocols. They are thinking 3 moves ahead. They are asking themselves what the enemy will expect, and then doing something completely different. The second story, about Major Sarah Mitchell and her battalion, showed you that humans can learn from their defeats. They do not simply accept failure as final. Instead, they study what went wrong and they prepare for the next engagements. Sarah Mitchell went home and spent 2 years preparing defenses that would make the Helios system nearly impossible for us to conquer. She weaponized the environment. She studied our tactics until she could predict our movements. She created something that we would struggle against for years to come. Every time you face a human, you must assume they have already studied a previous engagement with Krell forces. You must assume they know your tactics. You must assume they have prepared something that will surprise you. Third story about Dr. Helen Reeves and Nurse Emma Torres showed you something different. It showed you that human motivation comes from different sources than Krell motivation. A Krell medic would never sacrifice their life for patients. We are not built for that kind of sacrifice, but humans are. Humans have something inside them that makes them willing to die for strangers. They will sacrifice themselves for the weak. They will risk everything to protect children. They will give their lives for people they barely know. This makes them unpredictable in a way that our military models cannot easily account for. When you're fighting humans, you cannot predict their choices based on pure logic. You must account for their sense of honor, their desire to protect others, and their willingness to accept personal loss for the greater good. The fourth story about Captain Nathan Brooks showed you that humans can control their violence. They understand that excessive cruelty creates long-term enemies. They understand that mercy and victory can lead to peace instead of endless conflict. Nathan Brooks proved that a human military leader can be both terrible in battle and kind in victory. He can defeat you and still respect you. He can win and still see you as having value. This combination of qualities is what makes humans truly dangerous. They do not seek conquest. They seek survival. They do not seek to destroy cultures. They seek to build partnerships. If we ever face a true war with humanity, where both sides bring their full military might to bear, the outcome is not certain. Many Krell speak with confidence that we would win such a war. They point to our superior technology. They point to our larger military forces. They point to our experience in conquest. But those calculations are missing something critical. They do not account for human determination. They do not account for human creativity. They do not account for the human willingness to lose everything rather than submit to domination. The Krell believe that a species that loses too much will surrender. The humans will keep fighting even after they have lost everything. The Krell believe that superior firepower ensures victory. Humans will find ways to neutralize that firepower. The Krell believe that we can intimidate humans into submission. Through displays of force, humans will respond to intimidation with even greater resistance. Vash took another drink, and his eyes seemed to look beyond the room, beyond the station, to something far distant. Over the years, I have come to respect humans. He said quietly, I have seen their soldiers and their doctors, their diplomats and their commanders. I have seen them at their worst and their best. I have concluded that humanity is a remarkable species. Not because they have the largest weapons, not because they have the most advanced technology, but because of who they are as individuals and as a community. They are willing to sacrifice. They are willing to adapt. They are willing to show mercy even to their enemies. They are willing to build something greater than themselves. If the Krell ever go to war with humans again, I pray that our leaders understand that this is not a simple conquest. This is not a primitive species that we can easily defeat. This is a species that will fight for everything they believe in, and if we are not careful, a species that will defeat. You see, I'm telling you all this because I want you to carry this knowledge forward. I want you to tell others. I want you to make sure that the next generation of Krell commanders understands what humans are capable of. I want you to ensure that we do not stumble into another conflict with humanity, unprepared and arrogant. Humans are not our enemies because of what they do. Humans are the creatures we must respect because of what they are willing to do. There is a difference. The final thing I want you to understand is that there is hope. Hope that humans and Krell might find a way to coexist. Many Humans I have spoken with do not hate us. They are willing to build relationships with us. They are willing to trade with us peacefully. They are willing to share the galaxy with us. But this peace only works if the Crow are willing to do the same. If we show strength combined with respect. If we treat humans not as inferiors to be conquered, but as equals to be negotiated with, then I believe we can have a future where humans and Crow live together, not as masters and servants, but as two species that understand the value in each other. Vash leaned forward and his old eyes were very serious. Remember these stories, he said to each of the younger officers. Tell them to others. Make sure that when you are in positions of command, you make decisions based on understanding humans, not on dismissing them. Make sure that you see humans not as obstacles to be eliminated, but as opponents to be respected. Make sure that you remember that the warriors of the Crow are skilled and strong, but the humans are something different. They are determined and creative and willing to sacrifice everything, and that makes them formidable, that makes them worthy of respect, that makes them dangerous, but it also makes them possible friends. The bartender finally approached, and Vash stood slowly, his whole body moving with difficulty. The younger officers stood as well. They had heard stories that would shape the rest of their lives and their careers. Vash placed payment for his drink on the table. He looked at each officer one final time. Go now, he said. Go and remember what I have told you. Go and carry this knowledge wherever you serve. And don't knowing that the future of both our species might depend on whether we remember this night and what we learned here.